Entering the Mayo experience.
Mayo experience. Mayo experience. Mayo experience. Experience.
Welcome to the Pat Mayo Experience, Week 8 DraftKings ownership projections at each position. Hit the index if you want to jump to the position of your choosing. But before you do that, give the episode a like. Smash that like button. Leave your DraftKings handle in the comment section. And please let me know what you think the ownership on Jalen Rocket Richard is going to be in the Week 8 DraftKings Millionaire Maker. And boom, you're in a draw for 20 DK dollars. I'll announce the winners live 10 a.m. Monday morning on the Waiver Wire and Recap Show. And don't forget, 10 a.m. Sunday morning, I'll be live on the DraftKings YouTube channel, breaking everything down, each of the games, all the injuries, updating the rankings with Tim Andacust and Garion Thorne. And if you're looking for the full injury report, that is a separate video up on the podcast and YouTube feed sometime Friday night. It's going to be a short one, so it shouldn't be out too much longer than, let's say, this one goes up. Then boom, you're going to see another one pop up right away. Joining me to break down each of the positions using the fansharesports.com tracking system is Geoff Ulrich from DK Live. What is happening, my man?
Not too much. Just, happy it's Friday. You got Week 8 coming up. Yeah, that's about it.
That sounds fantastic. You sound very fired up for the week.
Oh, very fired up. Yeah, no, I mean, look, I am kind of fired up for the slate. It's a good slate. I've got some really good matchups. Rams, Packers. I'm really looking forward to that game. Other potential shootouts on the slate. So, I mean, as far as like a DFS slate, I actually think this is one of the more interesting ones of the year. So,
right, well, let's talk running backs to kick this off. In terms of the fansharesports.com tagging system, James Conner comes in at number 1. Number 2 is Philip Lindsay, and then Todd Gurley. Kareem Hunt is in that mix as well. It's those top 4 that everyone is gravitating towards. Obviously, no Royce Freeman is really boosting up the value of Philip Lindsay this week. He's only $5,200 on DraftKings. That's where everyone's going for a lot of savings. The only other guy they're really going down to, if you want more savings, is Jalen Richard. Obviously, Philip Lindsay in a much better spot because he's probably game script independent with no Royce Freeman around, probably going to get all the goal line work if that's not going to be Devonta Booker. Although, if they do fall behind a ton, we have seen the Broncos turn to Booker in primo passing situations.
that's the worry I have with Lindsay too. And I'm not trying to put anyone off him because I really like him in this spot. I mean, the Broncos went for 136 rushing yards and 2 touchdowns. Freeman and Lindsay combined when they first played, right? So you would see, and he's been getting targets. Like Royce Freeman is basically nothing in the pass game, but Lindsay's been getting pretty consistent targets, not a ton, but some. So you'd figure even if they got down, Lindsay's going to have a role. But you're exactly right. I mean, they just hang on to Devontae Booker, and for some reason, they want to give him like this passing down role. So there is a little bit of concern there. He's only 5,200, so I still think he's worth like having a little slight risk of that. He's really performed well. I mean, 6 yards per carry basically coming in, a good matchup. I just think he's too cheap and it's too good a situation to overlook personally.
So the guys that I mentioned are going to be exceptionally chalky, probably around 20% in the Millionaire Maker. The guys from the very top end that no one is playing are going to be Saquon Barkley, Christian McCaffrey, and Chris Thompson. Do you have any feel for those guys? Because it looks like Thompson is going to play. It's not for sure, but if he's back, he's a bit priced up, but he's going to come in at like 1%.
I would rather go to Adrian Peterson in that matchup. The Giants got rid of their best run stopper, like Snacks, whatever his name is, Snacks Harrison or something like that. But that's a pretty big blow. Like this team wasn't that great against running backs to begin with. And Adrian Peterson's been playing. He's a little bit banged up, but Chris Thompson, who knows how big a role he's going to have. He might still be a little bit banged up. I just think that this is more of a spot for Adrian Peterson, quite frankly. The Redskins are a better team than the Giants, even though this game is like almost a pick 'em right now, which kind of seems weird to me. But yeah, I think I'd rather go the Peterson route personally.
Kerryon Johnson's in that mix too. Everyone was all over Kerryon Johnson last week. He performed quite well. He got the 1 goal line touch, didn't convert. Then they brought in LeGarrette Blount to get in, but he paid off his price in spades last week. But now no one wants to use him against Seattle, who, a good defense, not a great defense by any means.
Yeah. I haven't checked. Is Theo Riddick playing this week? I didn't check.
I checked today. There's been no report today, but he didn't practice Wednesday. He didn't practice Thursday. I'm guessing that he's probably not going to suit up this week. Yeah. So if that's the case, it just seems strange that Barkley seems almost matchup proof because he's going to get his work in the passing game regardless. And if he can break a big one, it just seems strange that he's going to come in sub 10% of all these top end guys.
I agree. I think if I was going Christian McCaffrey's price is pretty tempting too, but the Ravens, we saw them kind of shut down Kamara last week, and it's a similar situation. McCaffrey's getting a lot of touches, but it's not quite every down, right? So I think I'd agree. I'd go up to Barkley if you're looking for that low-owned tournament play. And you're right. I mean, there's a lot of these guys, McCaffrey, Barkley, Thompson, Adrian Peterson, I'd throw in there too. They're going to be really low owned. I mean, we're looking at like a very concentrated ownership on 3 or 4 players. Connor, Gurley, obviously, Kareem Hunt's getting love. So there's a big difference, a big gap this week between the top running backs in terms of ownership.
Well, just objectively, who do you think is a better play, Mixon or James Conner? Because I kind of like Mixon more.
I mean, I don't hate Joe Mixon, and I was actually a little bit surprised that people are so high on Connor. I mean, I guess I get it. I guess I shouldn't say I'm surprised. I just figured that there would be a couple other players getting a little bit more love than him. And I think Mixon is fine. I mean, it's a good bounce back spot for the Bengals. I mean, Mixon is still involved in the pass game. So, yeah, I agree. I mean, of the players we mentioned, Connor's probably the one I deem most fadeable. But, yeah.
I mean, it's tough to get to Barkley because he's sort of in that, he's really sandwiched at that price point that, like, if you pay up, you're probably just going to pay up for Gurley, which obviously is the better move. But I'm so tempted by that price tag, the fact that no one's talking him up, and the price is going to depress ownership, that it almost seems like any time that one of these really high-end running backs is going to be, and it's not like the matchup is devastating. Like, McCaffrey has a bad matchup, and he doesn't get goal line work, so he's not going to score a touchdown. So it's hard for him to pay off his price, even though it's down a bit with Barkley. He can pay off 8,800, no problem. Like, he can outscore Gurley this week.
Absolutely. I mean, and I mean, I mentioned, who I'd be targeting, as far as those chalky running backs. I mean, I don't have a problem going with the Rams pass game and leaving Gurley out of it, quite frankly. I mean, it seems risky, but there's so many other good players. I mean, we haven't even talked about a guy like David Johnson with the new OC or Tariq Cohen or something like that.
What do you make of David Johnson with the new OC? Because it's not just like all of a sudden Byron Leftwich's column plays and, hey, David Johnson's David Johnson again, the guy that in season-long leagues people made the case to draft 1 overall, probably went like 3 or 4 or whatever. Like, is he going to be that guy again? Probably not. He'll be better, I would think, but that's a big leap.
I'm kind of buying into it, to be honest. Byron Leftwich obviously was like Bruce Arians' kind of, his protege mentor relationship. And I really feel like he's been sitting there and just looking at Mike McCoy and just, he's going to implement a lot of his own plays. It's probably, you're right, it might not happen overnight, but the matchup against San Francisco is so good that I just wonder if this might just all come to a head and then bouncing back. I don't know. I could see a David Johnson breakout game here. So I do buy into it this week. It's obviously risky because the floor is not good, but I think for tournaments at 6,700, I'm gonna be overweight.
From the sub $5,000 level, Nick Chubb is getting a ton of ownership consideration. He'll probably be in the double digits. Jalen Rocket Richard and Doug Martin might both crack 10% as well. And the other one is Raheem Mostert, because it doesn't look like Matt Breida is going to play. Again, that's not confirmed yet while we talk, but are you better off just like taking Duke Johnson from down here, who no one's going to own? Even someone like Isaiah Crowell, who looks like he has the entire backfield to himself outside of Cannon, that he's going to be like 5%. Like, would you rather play a 16% Mostert or a 5% Crowell? Wouldn't you rather play Crowell?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, like, Alfred Morris is still involved, and like, who else? Kyle Juszczyk could get carries. Like, it's not. Kyle Shanahan will keep a rotation. It's not like Mostert is going to get 30 carries or something like that. At least I really doubt that's going to happen. And like I said, San Francisco's not a good team, so I don't see the appeal there personally. And there's too many other good value backs like who are just they're more expensive, but they've got so much better upside. And I agree on Crowell. I mean, he just from a volume perspective, this guy could pay off. The weather in Chicago is not supposed to be great either, so it just leads to more running probably, and maybe a few like shorter passes for Crowell. So I'd take Crowell over him 100%, especially at like reduced ownership.
Well, the one thing too, and Philip Lindsay, like I mentioned, is going to come in around like 15, 16, 17%, potentially up to 20% ownership, especially now that the concrete news that Royce Freeman is not going to play. I just look at the other guys around him, like Carry-On's there. Marlon Mack does look like he's going to suit up in Oakland and taking on that bad Raiders defense, which you can run all over. And you'd think people would be super amped for Marlon Mack. They didn't practice on Thursday. He did practice on Friday. Will that kill his ownership, do you think? Because he was projected to be very high, But now with Freeman out, Lindsay getting some momentum, that Mac might just fall through the cracks again?
I think he might, to be honest. I mean, I was high on him at the start of the week, and I was like, oh, he's going to turn out to be super chalk. But we faded on him, and now you see Lindsay kind of popping up in tags and stuff like that. So I do think Lindsay will be higher owned. I think Mac, if everything sounds good, and he did practice in full today. I mean, obviously he's had injury concerns, so there's risk here. I mean, I'm not going to say there's no risk because he's been an injury-prone player his entire career, but it's a great matchup. I mean, Oakland's a bottom 5 run defense. Mac looked great last week, so I think there's just as much potential with Mac as there is with Lindsay this week. And you know, if Lindsay gets too chalky and you know you're not quite sure about him as me, then I think Mac's a fine play. I haven't quite decided what I'm going to do with him yet either, because I do like Cohen in this range too. This whole range is pretty chock full, but yeah, I mean, tough decisions here, quite frankly. I mean, I think all these guys are going to have ownership. I think Lindsay's probably going to come in the highest owned.
Let's move to wide receivers. Number 1 in the fansharesports.com tagging system for week 8 is AJ Green. Number 2, Tyler Boyd. So that's a whole lot of fun. That means Andy Dalton's going to be peaking here as well. Devontae Adams is number 3. Robert Woods is right there with him as well. Jarvis Landry also garnering a ton of buzz this week. And after that, it's like Jordy Nelson, Emmanuel Sanders. Is everyone just going to... I don't have the numbers on this. Maybe you do. When does the Bengals chalk work out? When does that ever happen?
Yeah, I think it's like 5%. I think maybe once in like 2009 it worked out or something. Yeah, I agree. I mean, I feel the same way. I'm not buying this. I'm not buying like 30% owned like AJ Green, Andy Dalton stacks. I mean, the Bengals haven't looked good their last few games either. I mean, that's something else to consider. And Tyler Boyd is still performing, but holy cow, like his price is now, it's almost $7K. That's a little bit scary. So you really need to be sure in this spot, and you still have like Joe Mixon, CJ Azuma. I'm fine fading these guys personally. Like if AJ Green goes absolutely nuts, that's fine. I'll live with it, but I'm not paying up for the Bengals chalk this week.
Well, one of the things that you can look at in this game, it's the second highest total on the slate. It's 54.5, only behind the Packers and the Rams, which is now up to 57. But if you're going to look at like even the spread, it's dropping. It opened at 6. It's now down to 3.5. But the Bengals are still favored by 3.5. We just discussed how Joe Mixon is going to be the man who's left behind from the top of the running backs. Would it make sense to play Mixon and bring it back with like Jameis and someone else? Because it seems like everyone's all over the Bengals passing game. Not really anyone on Tampa, that you can get access to this game and still get the elite players, just the ones that no one owns.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, especially from a Bengals perspective, going with Mixon as the lower owned piece of this offense. I mean, because he's still a huge piece of this offense, makes perfect sense to me. Going back with Jameis or whoever, the Tampa Bay side's a little bit more tricky because Mike Evans and then you have Deshaun. Obviously, I like OJ Howard. I think if you're targeting tight ends here, he saw his most targets with Jameis Winston as a starter last week. We'll get into tight ends, obviously. But, yeah, I think that approach makes sense for that game.
There are not a lot of cheap wide receivers that just pop off right now. So when we look at who's going to be owned from the bottom end, I mentioned Jordy Nelson. He's the one who's probably going to be the highest. He's at $4,700. You have like Christian Kirk at $4,500, who's popping a little bit. Chris Godwin, who's projected at 5% ownership. He's like the third highest one. Sammy Watkins is down there as well. Do you like any of these really low-end receivers? Because I keep hearing Cortland Sutton's name pop up. I understand it because he's playing the Chiefs, but I am not in love with like his target share. And I know this might come back to kill me. I think I'd rather play Martavis Bryant.
Yes. I think I came to that conclusion this morning too when I was looking over things. Martavis Bryant just has a way better chance of getting a huge market share of targets in this game. And I mean, Cortland Sutton, we all want the Cortland Sutton thing to happen. He's a great player. He's going to be a number 1 receiver at some point in his career, but it's not like until Demaryius Thomas goes, I don't think. I mean, he's not getting it. You'd have to see a major shift in focus in one game. And we don't really have any reason other than I guess it's an up-tempo matchup. But I think it's Martavis Bryant for me too. He got talked up today, which I don't know, always feels like a trap when a coach talks up a player. But, he had been getting pretty consistent targeting even before Amari Cooper went. So I agree. 3,700. That's where I'm going at that price.
Well, what if we don't know what's going to happen with Allen Robinson? It looks like they're keeping this down to the very last second. We probably won't know until Sunday morning at 11:30 when they release the actives and inactives, both Allen Robinson and Khalil Mack. It looks like they're shaping up that way for the Bears. Does Taylor Gabriel just pop off the page then at like 5K? He's around there. Geronimo Allison is one that I thought would carry more ownership, but isn't. He's at $5,000. He's going to make his return this week. Because when I started doing my first run of builds that I want to pay up at running back, because that's what you want to do, that I found myself gravitating towards that like 5K range at receiver, because I wasn't really in love with any of the cheaper options. That I'm surprised more of those guys aren't being talked up more. Like even Doug Baldwin's in that mix. That I like Doug Baldwin.
I don't hate Doug Baldwin this week, I guess. Although it's, again, we need to see like you'd have to hope he got healthy over the bye or something. So would need a little bit of change of that. Taylor Gabriel would be interesting. I'm a little bit worried about the weather there right now. It's not just raining in the forecast, but it's wind too. So if you get a good forecast Sunday morning, I'd be much more inclined to go with Gabriel's if Robinson was out, because I mean it's a great matchup. The Jets secondary has been brutal. But also say that if Robinson is out, it would bump up Trey Burton a little bit more for me too. I like Allison, and the one thing is Cobb is still questionable. If Cobb is ruled out, I would definitely go Geronimo Allison in that range.
I think even if Cobb plays, you can go with Geronimo Allison.
For sure, yeah.
I don't think that Cobb is really. I think you could use, if you wanted to fade Devonta Adams, which I am not recommending, but you wanted to do a Rodgers stack, you could go Rodgers, Allison, and you could use Cobb. And if Cobb sits, you can use Valdez-Scantling again too, because he's been good ever since Cobb has sat.
Yeah, he'll play the slot if Cobb doesn't play again. So I mean, he's in play too. Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess the only one from down there, like we talked about, Cortland Sutton, he's like in the low threes. I don't mind Martavis Bryant. If Seth Roberts plays and he's dealing with this concussion, I think that he's going to pass protocol because they're coming off the bye week, so he should return. Does he have any interest for you?
I guess he's got to have a little bit of interest. What's his price again? It's really cheap.
$3,400.
Yeah, 34. Yeah. So I guess he's got a little bit. I just feel like he's probably just pay up to Martavius. But yeah, Seth Roberts. I mean, it's just there's not much else down there to talk about. So I think he's got a shot at 7 targets. So yeah.
All right, quarterbacks in terms of the fansharesports.com. Tagging for the week, Jameis comes in at number 1. He's followed by Rodgers and Andrew Luck. Mahomes is generating a ton of tags too. Andy Dalton is going to be up there. From what I see in terms of ownership projections, there's no one who's going to be incredibly chalky. It's so flat with how people are picking and choosing that we could get into a situation where there might be one quarterback above 10%, and realistically, that's not that much.
I really thought Aaron Rodgers was going to be like the guy this week. Like I thought he might, maybe not like be crazily owned, but be the clear-cut number 1. What you're saying is right, though. I mean, it looks like a big spread, and I guess that comes down to the slate because there's a lot of juicy games, and people are just gravitating to different spots. But for me, Aaron Rodgers is the clear-cut number 1 here. I mean, you got the Packers who are probably going to be having to throw a ton against a fast-paced team who have allowed elite quarterbacks to have monster games against them. If the Packers are going to keep this close, it's because Aaron Rodgers threw for 400 yards and like 3 touchdowns. So to me, I want a piece of that. I want a piece of Goff too, who's going to be like 5% owned. His team has the biggest implied team total maybe we've seen all year. So I just like targeting that game. I like both quarterbacks.
So if you go all the way down like the ownership list and the tagging list, the 2 guys that no one's really talking about, probably for good reason. One is Joe Flacco at Carolina. The other one is Derek Carr at home coming off the bye week. Like everyone's so enamored with all these Raiders this week. Like you're going to see Jared Cook, you're going to see Jordy Nelson, Jalen Richard, all going to be high up in terms of ownership. We're talking about Martavis Bryant and potentially Seth Roberts as sleepers only because they might generate a ton of volume, but no one wants to play Derek Carr against the team that plays the fastest pace in the league. Like he might throw the ball 55 times in this game. I mean, why not take a shot with him if you're going to use all the rest of them?
I'll admit the thought of Derek Carr fluttered through my mind this morning. It makes sense. I'm like, well, if I like Martavis Bryant and Jordy Nelson is interesting, does that mean Derek Carr is going to have a good game and he's only 5,200? It sounds horrible because the Raiders are horrible, but it makes sense. I mean, if Martavis Bryant goes for a 90-point touchdown, basically paid off on Derek Carr. You're close, right? So, yeah, I mean, I think for tournament stacks, if you're going with Bryant, the Colts game versus the Raiders still has like a 50-point total. So there's a potential there. Raiders coming off a bye. I can't say I hate it. I can't say I do. And I think I'd rather go with him than Flacco or Mayfield or anyone else in that range, or Russell Wilson. Basically anyone else under 6. I think I'd just take a shot with the cheap guy in Carr and hope for a crazy game.
And that is, you mentioned the stacking purposes for it too. Like even if you wanted to use Cook and Nelson, which I do not because I hate those guys. So let's say I used Carr and Jalen Richard and Martavis Bryant as my Raider stack. That's super cheap. You can pay up everywhere else if you want to.
Yeah, that's the appeal of it, right? I mean, Martavis Bryant and Derek Carr alone is it's like under 9K basically. It is under 9K, so that's really, really cheap for a stack. I mean, you can't get much more cost effective than that, especially against a high paced opponent in a game with good scoring environments. So
and if Marlon Mack plays like we talked about, that he's someone that his ownership is being depressed the more the week goes on, but it does look like he's going to play. You're probably not going to bring it back with Ebron now that it looks like Jack Doyle's going to play. So and T.Y. Hilton outside is always a little bit worse than T.Y. Hilton indoors, but maybe you bring it back with Mack and Hilton or just Mack, and now you have this super cheap stack. And if you use Mack, who's in like the mid 5,000s, that you use the Raiders guys, like you can probably get access to Travis Kelce if you wanted to. You could get access to Gurley and another elite running back and another elite receiver. Like, it's not terrible. It's probably not the winner, but I mean, someone just won the Millionaire Maker with Brock Osweiler.
Use Derek Carr this week. Use Martavis Bryant. The world is your oyster, I guess. I mean,
are we prepared for 0 points? Because I mean, I went down this entire row with Jermaine Kearse last week, and he fucked me.
Yeah, well, so did I. Unfortunately, let's not even talk about Jermaine Kearse. But it does look good. I mean, it looks plausible, right? At the very least, you're going to be able to get like all these good running backs in there. So I don't know. We'll see. But at the very least, I'm going to have Martavis Bryant exposure this week. That's my Raiders. That's as far as I'll go right now. But
if I play a whole bunch of lineups and I do use some Raiders stacks, I'll start subbing in Seth Roberts for Martavis Bryant at some point. Because Derek Carr does like to throw to him near the goal line. It's one thing we've seen with Seth Roberts.
No, Seth Roberts is like Alfred Blue. He hangs around the team. He sucks in targets and like fantasy points. And and now that no Amari Cooper, who knows what he's going to do. So I agree.
Let's move to tight ends. At the very top of the fansharesports.com tagging rankings, it is David Njoku, as it probably should be. Then you got Travis Kelce, then CJ Uzomah, Vance McDonald, Eric Ebron, OJ Howard, and Jared Cook also getting a ton of tags as well. It does look like those top 4 guys are going to come in super chalky, and you're going to see Eric Ebron just kind of fall to the wayside, I think. Would you still use Ebron at his price point knowing that Jack Doyle is coming back? Because he was still catching touchdowns when Doyle was playing.
Yeah, just from a price perspective, I feel like it hasn't come down enough with like Hilton back and Mack back and all these other pieces. So personally, I'm not going there at all. The other thing is I just like the players under 4K this week, or I also like the players around him better. So I could say it's not that Ebron can't go off in that environment. It's still a fine matchup. It's just and Luck is playing great, but I just like the other players better for the price, personally. If
you're going to do that build where you just have a ton of expensive running backs and then you do need to save money elsewhere, I don't love eating the Bengals chalk, but I think CJ Secret of the Uzomah is going to be someone that you're going to need to have at $3,500. That would be the chalk I'd be willing to eat to get those savings. Unless, we just talked about the Jets. They're down their top 2 receivers. They're down their pass-catching running back. How about Chris Herndon the fourth at $2,800?
Is his name actually Chris Herndon the fourth?
It is.
It is too. God, that's weird. I didn't know that. It's the Jets really don't have anything. Again, the problem with Herndon, he's playing like 30% of the snaps, but the other tight ends don't really see many targets. So, keep that in mind, obviously. It's not like a guarantee this guy's going to start getting 7 targets every game, but he's in play. I agree. Sam Darnold just does not throw it very far either. Like he's kind of like Eli Manning in that regard. He doesn't throw very far past the line of scrimmage very often. So Herndon's in play. I think Gerald Everett is an okay tournament target too, although that's really boom or bust. I like Vance. I like OJ Howard personally.
Yeah, I like OJ Howard more than I like Vance this week. It always seems like if people are hyping up Vance, play Jesse James, and if people are off of Vance, play Vance.
Yeah, and that is a scary part about Vance, because Jesse James is still playing like 60% of snaps. So Vance is playing a lot of snaps too, but it could swerve towards James for 1 week. It is scary, I agree.
And like there's this whole range of guys too. Like no one's playing Kittle, no one's playing Olsen, no one's playing Reed, no one's playing Evan Ingram. I find that kind of surprising.
Yeah, I think it just comes down to price. Kittle obviously 5,500 now. I just feel like, people thought he had his big game last week, and they don't really want to trust CJ Beathard again, which, makes sense. Reed just has been really
Abysmal.
disappointing all
Yeah,
year.
he's been bad.
Yeah, he's been bad. I mean, I don't know how the Washington Redskins are winning games. Like, I watch their offense, and I just don't understand how they move the ball, but they do. So it just doesn't really include Jordan Reed having big fantasy games. Ingram is frustrating because he can be a lot better than this. It's just his market share he's the fourth option right now. I mean, Sterling Shepard is seeing targets over him, so he'll probably have some boom or bust moments, and you get him a really low ownership here. But I don't know. I think I'd just rather go to Howard in a really good game environment or Vance McDonald.
We're going to know this, and this is going to go under the radar because I haven't seen any reports on Nick Vannett all week because he had missed week 6 with a back injury. Seattle goes on bye. I don't know whether or not he's going to play, so I'm waiting for reports on that. But if he doesn't, it does look like Ed Dixon's coming back for the Seahawks. He probably gets on the field like 80% of the time against this Lions defense, which isn't very good, that he's a giant body in the red zone. They don't use Brandon Marshall anymore, so he's going to be the biggest guy out there, except for like David Moore on the Seahawks, that at $2,500, he could catch a touchdown. He could also alligator arms the ball because he can barely catch, but still, if it's just going to be him, we've seen the Seahawks use their tight ends this year.
Yeah, I mean, Ed Dixon isn't that bad. I mean, he's popped off a couple times. He started his career as like a pass catching tight end, but I agree. I mean, he's not like Rob Gronkowski or something. But I agree. I mean, I think if obviously this is a play you're gonna have to wait till game time decision, because you probably want Vannett to be out for sure. And Dixon hasn't even been activated yet, I don't think, but it does look like they're going to activate him. I agree though. I liked Dixon before the start of the year as like a sneaky, cheap tight end play, just season long, whatever. But because again, the Seahawks don't throw a ton, but they don't have a ton of big bodies near the goal line, and it just feels like it would work with Ed Dixon. So that is a play if you're going to go min price. I could get behind. Jeff Herman for Denver in a good game environment isn't terrible there either at that price.
I think I'd rather play Herndon over all of these guys, though, if I was going to pay down and just take an absolute gamble at tight end.
Yeah. He's got a better chance of seeing like 8 or 9 targets, I feel like. These other guys are more
touchdown or bust.
Pure touchdown dependent, yeah.
Finally, defenses. There's one defense to rule them all. In terms of ownership this week, it is the Pittsburgh Steelers. They have by far the most tags. Everyone, and I agree, they're a great price. They're $2,300. They're playing Cleveland, who loves turning the ball over and taking sacks. They're 8-point favorites at home. This is setting up to be the chalk bust of the week because I'm going to play them and they're going to be awful because that's what happens to me. Chicago and Arizona are next up. I don't know how many people are actually going to pay for Arizona. They say that they're a good play, and I agree, and I'm actually going to use them as well. But they're $3,200 in a week where you can pay up for the Bears, who are super expensive, or just pay down at defense. That there's enough quality options that you can luck sack your way into. You can save $1,000 instead of paying for the Arizona defense and have someone who's like close.
It does feel like there's a lot of options this week on defense. So I agree. Like Arizona would be more interesting if they weren't getting attention and they were a little bit cheaper, but for some reason they're getting a little bit of attention, I guess. I mean, CJ Beathard just turns the ball over so much. Maybe people are just going on that angle and they're going with the bounce back.
That's not a bad angle to play.
No, turnovers are pretty good as far as I've heard for DSTs, right? So, I guess I can get behind it. I don't think I'm going to go there personally because, like you said, I'll probably just either, if I don't use the Bears and pay up for them, I'll just go as cheap as I can because I feel like, Washington. I also like the Colts at 2,900. I feel like people are maybe skipping on them. I mean, they've had a really good pass rush all year. They're getting turnovers again. I think they're a little bit better team than people want to give them credit for. So I don't mind the Colts at 2,900 again. I don't know. It is a weird week because Pittsburgh is so mispriced. It feels like that. It's hard to make an argument against them because they're so cheap and they do have a good pass rush, but it's a DST and chalky DSTs aren't usually the best thing because it's such a high variable position. So it's a bit of a weird week for defenses.
I like the Lions. The Lions are coming in at $2,400. We know the offensive line problems that Seattle has. Detroit still remains number 1 in adjusted sack rate for their defensive line. So just as a sack base, I used the Lions last week and they gave up so many points and didn't generate any turnovers against Brock that they had the 4 sacks. they scored 4 points. That's all they actually did. That eventually you think if you can continue generating this sort of pressure that you can walk someone into bad decision making. The one problem I have is, although that's a high total game, you would expect passing. Seattle goes out of its way to run the ball as much as possible, and that kind of scares me.
Yeah, I would kind of, I'll say this. If I'm going under 25, I'll probably go Detroit too. They're due for some turnovers. Like they've got a ton of sacks, but they're like league bottom in turnovers as a defense, which is weird because they've actually played pretty well like throughout the whole season. So, positive regression could be in the cards here. They have a 2 or 3 turnover game, maybe a touchdown. They've played well. Like it's a good squad. So I agree on that respect. I think if you're going there, just go back to them. Kind of let us down last week. But again, it's not that they play bad. It's just they're not getting the turnovers yet. At some point, they're going to get some turnovers. So.
The last one that I will throw out is the Ravens defense at Carolina. Cam can put up points on them, I'm pretty sure of that, but they're second in adjusted sack rate. They lead the league in sacks with 27. In Cam's style of play, where he's so willing to bring the ball down and run with it, and trying to extend plays, that opens itself up to a lot of sack opportunities as well. If they're always in the backfield and they're able to shut down this run game like we've seen from them all season long, that they might just tee off on Cam.
Would you, because the Panthers defense is kind of interesting too. Like they've averaged like 11 points at home this year.
They don't, I don't know. Flacco's not turning the ball over. He's just throwing the ball up quickly or throwing it away.
I hate to admit it, but yeah, Flacco really isn't that good a target this year for defenses. I don't know. Yeah, the Ravens are, it's kind of, I haven't quite decided which way I'm bleeding on this game. That's why I'm so, I think, undecided on the Ravens defense, but obviously they're playing well. So, I think I'd rather pay up for the Colts at that price, but I obviously see the upside with the Ravens too. And again, like with the Steelers sucking so much ownership, like the Ravens, Colts, Panthers, whoever you decide on, maybe like 5% owned, which is great. So
yeah, everyone outside the Steelers is probably going to be sub 10%. Because actually, the Bears might crack 10% because they're the most expensive, and the most expensive defense always gets owned.
Yeah, I got to pay up for defense, right? But it is a good matchup. But although if Khalil Mack doesn't play, definitely a fade target. So
yeah, I'm just looking at the bottom end of offensive lines right now in football in terms of adjusted sack rate, like giving up the most sacks. Cleveland's actually the worst. Tennessee's on bye this week. Buffalo's on the slates. Then it's Seattle, hence that Lions matchup. Let's see, San Francisco, the New York Giants, the Eagles on the slate, Arizona, Green Bay. What about the Rams D? They just put up like 9 sacks. And I know like you don't want to stream against Aaron Rodgers, but I used the Lions D against Aaron Rodgers like 3 weeks ago, and it paid huge.
Would you rather use the Rams or the Chiefs?
The Chiefs are getting talked up, and the Rams are going to be like a 1% defense.
I guess that's true. Yeah, the Rams will be like, they might even not even be 1%. They might be like 0.5%. So, look, I mean, whenever you get a talented unit, they're capable of doing good things against anyone, right? So Aaron Donald's still out there. Still got Marcus Peters ball hawking, right? If they get pressured Aaron Rodgers, it's not like he can't turn the ball over a couple times. So, yeah, they're in play. Very boom or bust, but they did play a lot better last week. Although, take it with a grain of salt because we know who the quarterback was.
Yeah, that's true. But like, Rodgers is not going to throw a ton of picks. We know that, but he's prone to fumble all the time.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure.
He's constantly trying to extend plays. But if one of the reasons we like Aaron Rodgers so much this week because they're going to be down in this game and he has to pass 45, 50 times, like, oh Jesus, that's fantastic for Aaron Rodgers. He's going to accumulate so many fantasy points. If he's going to be passing that much anyway, he's going to be under duress for a lot of those.
Oh, he might get sacked like 8 times too, right? So like you said, more pass attempts, more sacks, fumble opportunities. Absolutely. No. I mean, I see the theory with the Rams. I'm not sure if this is quite the week I'd want to go that route because there are other cheap defenses I still feel like have a lot of upside, but it's a viable play for sure. I mean, like I said, the Rams are talented enough that they can have a big game against pretty much anyone. So.
And they're super cheap. They're someone you would pair with Gurley, I think.
Right.
If you play Gurley, if you're going to play the Rams defense, you should probably play Gurley along with them.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, before we get out of here, did you look at the spreads at all this week, over-unders? Because the highest one we mentioned, Rams-Packers, 57, 54.5, Bucks and Cincinnati, 53.5, Broncos-Chiefs. And then all the other ones are just kind of down. I mean, on the main slate, that is. Like 52 is New Orleans and Minnesota. But the next biggest one is Colts and Raiders. Everything else is kind of dropping down.
Yeah, it's a little bit interesting. Like that Colts Raiders game, definitely. I know you brought it up. It seems to have like a little bit of shootout potential. I mean, the Colts play fast. We'll see if they try and slow things down again for a second week with Marlon Mack. But I could see that one getting into a shootout-ish game. A little surprised the Seattle-Detroit line is actually 49. I thought it'd be smaller, but I guess that's good if you want to target that game. Yeah. I mean, the Packer Rams definitely 57. I mean, I still think I'd take the over there.
You would take the over there?
I think so, yeah.
I see it.
I mean, the last time the Rams played a really good quarterback, Kirk Cousins, it was just a complete, shootout. So I feel like same circumstances would apply here. So I don't know.
Yeah. Do you have any spreads that you like? Because I'm still tied to Arizona's +1 now. It's even better. I love Arizona against San Francisco here.
I agree. I take Arizona in that game. I can't say I like love anyone else this week, but the Colts just feel too good to ignore.
Oh, really? I went with the Raiders +3.
I don't know if I could do it. I feel like the Colts, again, I just feel like the Colts are a really underrated team. Their defense has been actually, again, a lot better than people think. They're getting healthier too. Like you said, they might get Jack Doyle back. So I think I would lean the Colts in that game. I also will say this: I don't mind the Bucks.
I like the Bucks too. The Bucks could win that game outright, and all the money is sort of throughout the course of the week. The line is just shrinking and shrinking and shrinking. And frankly, the Bengals haven't looked all that good since they beat Atlanta. And as it turns out, Atlanta's not that good.
Yeah, exactly right. So I just don't like the way the Bengals have trended, and I think Tampa's. They're a better team. Their defense has gotten a little bit better at least. And if their defense is just slightly below average, like their offense is good enough, especially in this matchup to win the game. So, I think the Chiefs could easily blow out the Broncos again. That spread's a little bit too big. It's not really like a game I'm overly targeting. Kind of feel the same way about the Bears, especially with the bad weather there. The spread just looks a little bit too big. So I like the Bears, but I'm not overly confident. I think the other one that I like, I like the Lions again. I think the Lions are a bit of an underrated team too.
Yeah, I actually like the Lions as well. They're 5-1 ATS so far this season. I'm just looking at it's Friday afternoon, so there's going to be more and more money put on these things. And if you're only looking at one place, maybe it's because of the Lions. But there's an overwhelming amount of one-sided cash this week on a bunch of these. 88% of the cash is on the Steelers. 91% of those bets have come in on the Steelers, and that line's not budging. It opened at 7 and quickly moved to 8, and it stayed at 8. I really like Cleveland there.
Yeah, I noticed that too. There are a lot of one-sided games. The Packers are getting a ton of money on them too. Packers always get money, but I think just people say, 9 points with Aaron Rodgers. I got to take it, right? So not an automatic there by any means.
And the Bears, 90% of the cash is on the Bears. 90% of the bets are on the Bears. I like the Jets at 7.5. It's now 8.
Like I brought up at the start, I mean, I like the Bears as a team, but that's a lot of points for a team that's had trouble closing out games. And the Jets have actually been good at just staying scrappy, and the weather's not good, right? So I'm probably just not going to touch that game. But even though I like the Bears, that's just too much. Too many points in my opinion.
Well, and to talk about your Colts point, 88% of the money is coming on the Colts.
That's the one chalk I'm willing to eat, just because it's the Raiders. And like I said, Andrew Luck and the Colts, I just think they're underrated.
Do want to let people know that the odds and lines are subject to change. See website for actual odds. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem and wants help, call 1-800-GAMBLER. That will do it on the Pat Mayo Experience. Got some spreads, got some ownership. We're going to go win some bucks this weekend. Hopefully not lose all our money by taking Jermaine Kearse this week. You going to play Jermaine Kearse at all? Because I got to throw him in a lineup or two just for peace of mind.
Good God, no. I'm not playing Jermaine Kearse.
For Jermaine Kearse. Where can everyone find your work, Geoff?
DK Playbook up there for sure. I got tournament plays article every week, just targeting some higher upside, swerves that you can think about. And definitely download the DK Live app. I know we talked about it last week, but it is one of the best out there for following games, following fantasy updates and stuff like that.
And you can see pictures and photos and videos of handsome Geoff on the DK Live app as well. So, if that doesn't entice you, I don't know what does. I'm Pat Mayo. You can follow me at ThePME on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. I'll be live Sunday morning, 10 a.m. Eastern Time, going over all the games, all the injuries, and updating the rankings to get you set, plus viewer questions for half hour at the end. If you got some start sits, hit me up. Me, Gary, and Tim will take our best shot to try to answer them correctly, I suppose. We're not going to give you bad information. We just might give you the wrong information. So be aware of that. The injury report will be up momentarily, so go over, smash the like on that one too. And if you want to get in the draw for $20 DK this week, the winners will be announced on Monday. Smash the like button, leave your DK handle in the comment section, and let me know what you think Jalen Rocket Richards ownership will be in the Week 8 DraftKings Millionaire Maker. I'm Pat Mayo. Good luck in Week 8. I'll see you next time.
That Mayo experience! Experience!